So now for Eye on Africa, coming up, ongoing tension in the Democratic Republic of Congo after a long-anticipated election is postponed. We'll have the latest with Thomas Nicolan in Kinshasa. Elsewhere, parts of Sudan are placed under a state of emergency after protests against the rising cost of living turned deadly. And we report on a new brand of champagne, born of an encounter between a French winemaker and a Guinean businessman. Start in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where opposition leaders have slammed the postponement of elections. The country had been due to vote this Sunday in a poll it was hoped would end the two-year-old crisis over the future of President Joseph Kabila. On Thursday, DRC's Electoral Commission ordered the poll be put back a week in order to replace voting equipment lost in a warehouse fire. An alliance of parties backing opposition candidate Felix Tshisekedi said that any further delay will not be accepted. With more from Kinshasa, here's our correspondent, Thomas Nicolan.
Before Felix Tshisekedi addressed the crowd on Friday in Kinshasa, his supporters did not want to hear anything about an election delay. They wanted to vote on the 23rd of December and nothing else. And then Tshisekedi told them that the authorities expected them to create trouble. And we know better, he said. Let's accept the delay, but for the very last time.
Whether we want to or not, we accept this delay. We accept it only because it will lay bare the full extent of the regime's lying. We know very well that this delay has nothing to do with the reasons put forward by the Electoral Commission. They give us excuse after excuse, but one day they'll run out of excuses. And December 30th will put a stop to their excuses. Even though we are calling on people to show restraint today, we call on everyone to show what they really think of the government on December 30th.
Felix Tshisekedi told his supporters to remain calm in the next few days, but the 30th of December is a red line according to the UDPS, a red line that shall not be crossed. Otherwise, the militants would take the matter in their own hands without waiting for the party's instruction, according to the Secretary General. Meanwhile, on Friday, Joseph Olengankoy, the president of a government commission charged with monitoring the elections preparation, urged the authorities to accept the UN help to deploy voting materials across the country so that the election can be held on the 30th of December.
Thomas Nicolan in Kinshasa there. Meanwhile, several people have been killed after a plane chartered by DRC's National Electoral Commission crashed near Kinshasa. The Antonov 26, operated by the company Gomer, was returning to the capital after delivering election results forms to the central city of Chikapa. There have been varying accounts as to the number of people on board and the number of casualties. Elsewhere, authorities in Sudan have declared a state of emergency in parts of the country after 3 days of protest left 8 people dead. Thousands have taken to the streets to protest against the rising cost of living. The demo is sparked by the government's decision to raise the price of bread. In the capital Khartoum, police firing tear gas as some protesters apparently called for the overthrow of President Omar al-Bashir. France 24's Emerald Maxwell reports.
This is all that remains of Sudan's ruling party headquarters. Here in Atbara, some protesters are calling for the overthrow of President Omar al-Bashir, and authorities have declared a state of emergency. Across the country, there were similar scenes after the government decided to triple the price of bread this week in one of the poorest countries in the world. In the capital, Khartoum, police fired tear gas to disperse demonstrators near the presidential palace, while protesters torched party headquarters in Dongola. Authorities in Al-Qadarif also declared a state of emergency after several people died in violent protests. Public anger has been building over the past year in the face of an ever-mounting cost of living.
Everything has become very expensive and we don't know what is happening. It feels like there's a ticking time bomb and we don't know when it will explode.
There are shortages in everything from cash to food. Inflation is running at close to 70% and the Sudanese pound has plunged in value. An economic crisis largely due to South Sudan breaking away in 2011. The secession lost Sudan the majority of its agricultural land, as well as 3/4 of its oil output, its main source of foreign currency.
Authorities in Morocco say 9 more people have been arrested over the killing of 2 Scandinavian female tourists by suspected Islamic State militants. 24-year-old Louisa Vesterega Jespersen from Denmark and 28-year-old Norwegian Maren Øyland were found on Monday in the Atlas Mountains with knife wounds to the neck. Moroccan authorities had originally arrested 4 suspects. They say pledged allegiance to the jihadist group in a video posted on social media before the killings. Elsewhere, counting continues in Madagascar in the wake of Wednesday's presidential election runoff. Despite both camps claiming victory and alleging fraud, EU observers say they've seen no evidence of malpractice. Partial official results put former President Andry Rajoelina about 10 percentage points ahead of his rival, another former president, Marc Ravalomanana. In Ivory Coast, family and friends of Issa Kone have been paying their final respects. Kone worked as a fixer for dozens of journalists covering events in the country, including for France 24 and our sister radio station RFI. The exact circumstances of his death, which came last Saturday after an altercation with police in Abidjan, remain unclear.
Today I realize how important my big brother was. I really don't know what to say to the people who came to say goodbye. I don't know what to say. I want to thank everyone for being here and for sharing this pain with the family.
Finally, and on a lighter note, as the festive season approaches, many of us are looking for the perfect bubbly to aid the festivities. And if you like your champagne with a twist, you could well be tempted by a bottle of Diane Diallo. It's the product of a meeting between a French winemaker and a Guinean entrepreneur. Laurent Berstachet takes a look.
In this upscale bar in Abidjan, clients are getting ready for a champagne tasting. But instead of Dom Perignon or Veuve Clicquot, they're encouraged to try a new brand called Diane Diallo. Named after its creator, the bubbly is entirely produced and bottled in France's Champagne region.
This is real champagne, produced following the true method of the region. It's not an African champagne, because that doesn't exist. It's simply the first to have an African name.
Diane Diallo knows champagne